Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. It feels like it's been a long time coming, but we are finally just a few days away from the biggest game of the season, Super Bowl 59, as the Philadelphia Eagles take on the Kansas City Chiefs. A rematch of 2 years ago? Technically, yes, but they're very different teams, and this Eagles team is a very different team from the team that played 2 years ago. So, fans are waiting with hopeful anticipation to see if this team will be able to accomplish its ultimate goal, or whether or not, as the Eagles have done 3 times before, they'll fall just short. But joining us to prepare for and break down this game is friend of the show and longtime sports writer for Philadelphia, Pro Football Hall of Fame sports writer, Ray Didinger. Ray, thank you so much for stopping by.
Happy to do it, Joe.
All right. Now, Ray, I'm just going to start with this. At the outset of the season, I'm not sure that there were a lot of people out there who were thinking that the Eagles would be back here, especially so soon, especially given how the team collapsed at the end of 2023 and all of the things that ensued. Did you think at the start of the season the Eagles would have made it to Super Bowl 59?
No, I certainly wouldn't have predicted it. I mean, I thought they would be very likely a playoff team. But to say that when the season started, I thought they were heading for the Super Bowl, no. Because there were too many questions left from the way last season ended. I mean, that collapse was pretty brutal. And there were a lot of questions that needed to be answered. Was Nick Sirianni even going to be back? If he came back, how long was the leash going to be? How were some of the new guys going to work out? And what was the relationship going to be between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts? I mean, these were all pretty big questions that were just sort of hanging out there. And nobody had any idea of how they were going to be answered once the season started. I mean, people could say now that, oh, no, I knew they'd be fine. But, okay, if you believe that, that's good for you. I mean, I didn't because to watch the way this team unraveled down the stretch last year and the way they simply didn't even show up for the playoff game in Tampa, how could you say, oh, they'll be fine this year? I mean, there was a lot of damage and a lot of broken pieces that had to be swept up and put back together again before you could even think about putting this team back on the field. Now, I thought that they had enough talent to be a playoff team. But to say that I had a whole lot of optimism that they could have a really big season and that they could possibly be in the Super Bowl, no, I didn't see that. I really didn't. I just took it on a week-to-week basis. Let's just see how they can they dig their way out of this. Can they find their way? Because they had the talent, but they had an awfully big mess to clean up. And it took them a while to do that. I mean, we were 5 weeks into the season before they started to hit their stride. But once they did, then they started playing really good football.
Yeah, and I definitely saw that going through the season as well. Just the fact that those first 4 weeks definitely seemed to be very rocky. Even after that week 5 bye week, the Eagles were the last team in the league to score any first quarter points at all. It took them until their November matchup against the Jaguars to put anything other than a 0 up in that section of the box score. The Eagles have gotten off to fast starts, though, throughout the course of the playoffs. They've gotten into that stride, and they've gotten off to those fast starts. They've scored now, I think their lowest, as I recall, getting ready for this, the lowest number of points that they scored in the first quarter was 10, and they've gotten off to those quick starts. What do you think? How do you attribute that to the playoffs? These quick starts that the team has gotten out to.
Well, I think they understood that they couldn't keep they couldn't keep putting zeros up in the first quarter every week. They had to find a way to get the offense moving, and they did it by letting Barkley carry the ball. I mean, you don't normally think that running plays can become big plays. But with this guy, they can. And a couple of these fast starts that they got and a couple of these early touchdowns came on just simple pitch plays where they just gave the ball to him and he just turned the corner and turned it into what you think maybe it's going to be a 5 yard run. It turns into a 60-yard touchdown. And that gave this team a jump start, which, that's important. I mean, to give your offense a chance to get going early, put a little more pressure on the other team, and play from ahead. I mean, when they finally started to do that, that was a real positive sign, and they've certainly done it in the playoffs. And they're probably going to have to do it again this week because this you're not going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs 13-10. This there's going to be a lot of offense and a lot of scoring in this game, and you certainly don't want to be trying to come from behind against this team. So, yes, the Eagles have shown that they've been a little bit better getting started in games now, and they're going to have to do that again this week against the Chiefs.
Yes, that they will. And this definitely seems to be the season where the Eagles have been really focusing on running the ball and playing defense. And a lot of the fans out there who were standing outside of Lincoln Financial Field and the NovaCare complex last season with those signs basically protesting, begging Nick Sirianni to run the football. That was a lot of those fans are probably feeling very vindicated over the course of this season when Saquon has been so instrumental to the offense and the team has gotten as far as it has.
Well, if you can run the ball that effectively and generate big plays in the running game, and combine that with a top-ranked defense, then you're going to be pretty tough to beat. Because if you run the ball and you have a run-based offense, you're not going to be taking a whole lot of chances on offense, which will take the turnover risk way down. And if you're playing really good defense and you're taking the ball away, you'll find yourself in a position the Eagles are, which is since week 5, they're plus 27 giveaway takeaway. So if you can do that, yeah, you can win 10 in a row. You can win 14 out of 15. You can do the things that they've done. And I was glad to see it because I've always been a proponent of running the ball. I mean, I talked about it all the years that Andy Reid was here. He used to drive me crazy with some of his play calling. Because I still think that you can say what you want about this being a quarterback's league and it's a passing league, but it's still a game of blocking and tackling. And if you can run the ball as well as this team's running the ball, and you have a really special player like Saquon Barkley running behind this offensive line, there's nothing to say that you can't generate that can't be a big play offense. The idea that if you run the ball, you're just settling for 3 and 4 yards doesn't have to be true. If your line is good enough and the guy that's carrying the ball is good enough, you can produce big plays. And the Eagles have certainly proven that this year.
That they have. And it hasn't needed to come on the back of Jalen Hurts, who, being very honest, didn't look, at least based on the eye test, didn't look quite as good as the last time that the Eagles found themselves in this position. But in a certain sense, he hasn't had to be. He's been able to rely on the weapons that he's had on offense. He's been able to rely on Saquon. He's been able to rely on A.J. Brown, on Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, all those pieces that have been such a big part of this offense that have enabled him to, as he figures out in a post Jason Kelce world, because he admitted that there was a lot of stuff that Jason Kelce had to that took off of Jalen's plate so he could focus on other things. In this post Jason Kelce world, where now he has to worry about some of these pass coverages and things like that, that he's been able to rely more on those weapons that he's had.
Yeah, I mean that was a responsibility. When he had Kelce as his center, Kelce did relieve him of a lot of those responsibilities. Kelce pretty much set everything that needed to be set at the line of scrimmage in terms of adjusting the blocking, setting the protections, indicating where the blitzes were coming from. I mean, Kelce was very good at that. And so he would do all that, and it allowed Hurts to concentrate really on looking in the secondary and looking at the back of the defense. He didn't have to worry about the front of it.
Hmm.
That responsibility changed this year. And, I think Jurgens is a good player and a smart kid who will pick that up. But there's no way this year that he was going to be as attuned to that as Kelsey was by last season. So more of that responsibility fell on Jalen Hurts, and I thought he handled it well, And I mean, there was a lot of concern about the knee injury coming off the Rams game. Um, I don't think a lot of people knew exactly how he was going to look coming after the Washington game. I mean, there was some real concern there
Hmm.
because after the concussion, he hadn't played a lot. He hadn't even practiced a lot. And there was some concern about just how good is he going to be in the Washington game? Is he going to be really ready for that kind of challenge to play a team that was coming in here that hot as Washington was? But he came out and he played really good. I mean, he played really, really well. He moved around well, made good decisions with the ball. If you take away the throwaway passes, he was about 20 for 24. Quarterback efficiency rating well over 100. And, made the big, big fourth down throw down the field that when they decided to go for it on 4th and 5 right before halftime. Frankly, I was surprised a little bit that they chose to go for it. And then to go for it that way, throwing it 30 yards downfield. But he dropped a perfect pass right in A.J. Brown's lap. And they get the catch, they get the touchdown, and they kind of put the game away right there. And I thought for all the questions that were being asked about Hurts going into the game and all the discussion back and forth about is he going to be up to the task, I thought the way he came out and played was very encouraging, and I would expect that. I really expect him to play well this week. I really do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how he picks apart the Kansas City defense on Sunday. It's going to be really important. Um, it was said by some folks following the game against Washington this past NFC Championship game that was really the first real complete game of the season. Would you agree with that statement, or if not, what would you say about that game or about how complete the team has been?
So I thought it was a really good performance. I mean, the most complete. I don't know. I mean, I thought they played very well against Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
I thought they played really well the game in Los Angeles that they played earlier this year. I thought those were pretty complete games against good opponents that the Eagles won and won pretty decisively. Um, but I think that this probably, if you're looking for what was their best game to this point, this would probably be it. Um, 55 points in a conference championship game you don't see every day. And they got contributions from everybody. I mean, the offense was really good, obviously. The defense was really good. And you got some big plays from special teams. And you got your takeaways. And what was really different about this, I mean, they had 5 takeaways the last time they played Washington and lost, but you had 5 takeaways and you got nothing out of them. It's fine to take the ball away from the other team, but what becomes winning football is when you take the ball away from the other team and you score with it. And the Eagles did that this week. Every time they took the ball away, they turned it into points. When they lost the game in Washington, they took it away 5 times, but really got very little out of it. If winning the giveaway takeaway battle, winning the turnover battle is an important part of winning, but just taking it away is only one aspect of it. Once you take it away, then you got to take it and turn it into points yourself. And that's when teams actually use that win. And the Eagles' 2 games against Washington are perfect examples of that. They had major takeaways in both games, but when the offense couldn't cash in, they wound up losing that game anyway. This past week in the championship game, the offense took the ball and did something with it.
And that is very, very important. Absolutely, 100% in agreement there. It's great to win that turnover battle, but you have to capitalize on the opportunity that you're given, and that
Yeah,
is critical.
yeah. I mean, if you take the ball away and 3 downs later you're punting it back, you haven't accomplished a whole heck of a lot. Or
Yeah.
you go for it on 4th down and you don't, and you turn it over on downs. Or you get into the red zone and you wind up kicking a field goal. So you wind up with 3 points. It's, you have to, this is what the coaches, this is what the term that the coaches are using, but situational football is where all the different components of the team have to work together. And the defense is forced to turnovers and taking the ball away, giving the ball to the offense. Then the offense has to go out and do its job, which is turn those opportunities into points. And that's going to be true again. That's going to be really true again this week against Kansas City. I mean, that's a dynamic offensive football team. We all know that. Mm-hmm. And if you get a takeaway, you have to do something with it. If you get that opportunity, you have to do something with it because they don't turn the ball over very often. But if they do, and you get those opportunities, you got to cash them in, and that's going to be something that I'm sure the Eagles have been talking about it now for the last 2 weeks because they know how important that is.
Absolutely, yeah, and this Kansas City team definitely. I mean, they're the behemoths. They're the New England Patriots of a couple of years ago, where they were the big bad in the room, so to speak. But this season they haven't really felt that way. They're not really all that great, especially if you look at they can be a very different team in the postseason. But even if you look at their postseason stats, like they're very middle or bottom of the pack among the teams that have made the postseason throughout their last couple of games in terms of rushing yards allowed, passing yards allowed, and just total offensive production. But especially if you look at the AFC Championship game that they played against the Bills had plenty of opportunities to capitalize on a Kansas City team that made a few mistakes, and they were not able to they weren't able to come out on top of that game. They were in that shootout throughout that, and that's going to be really important. This Kansas City team really seems to be a team that if you don't take advantage of the very small windows of opportunity that you can sometimes get with them, that they will blow you out of the water.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, they're two-time world champions for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, they know how to win. They know how to win. And you can look at the statistics from this year, and they're not as good as they have been in the past. I mean, Mahomes was sacked 36 times. That's a lot. Yeah. He threw 11 interceptions. That's a lot. Kelsey's numbers of this season were down. They were not very good on third down defense. They were not very good in red zone offense, statistically. But they win. They keep games close. Spagnuolo was a very good defensive coordinator. So they keep games close. They have a very simple formula. They keep games close into the fourth quarter. The defense keeps it close into the fourth quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, 4 or 5 minutes to go, Mahomes gets the ball, and that's it. He gets the ball and he takes it down. If he needs a touchdown, he gets it. If they need a field goal, they get it, and they win. I mean, if it's in one-score games, they play with complete confidence because they know how to win those games. And that's, if you're an Eagles fan, that's the scary part of it, because I think if you look at these teams and you match these teams up, I mean, in all likelihood, it's going to be a close game in the fourth quarter. And the Chiefs are really good in those situations. So the Eagles are going to have to play very smart, and they're going to have to play very sound, and as close to mistake-free as you can. You can't give them extra opportunities. You can't get stupid penalties. You can't give them first downs. If there's a play where your defense comes up with a third down stop, you can't get called for defensive holding where you give them another set of downs. You just can't do that. If Mahomes turns the ball over, your offense has to turn that into points. I mean, you can't let you use the term windows of opportunity. The Chiefs aren't a team that give you many of those, but if they do, then you have to take advantage of them. If you don't, you're going to wind up paying in the fourth quarter. And that's the kind of game you're looking at here. And if it's close, the pressure doesn't bother Mahomes. The situation doesn't seem to bother Mahomes. He can, whatever time is left on the clock, he can make it work. And so you have to, as a team, you can never let down, because they're a team that really knows how to play in big games and really knows how to win close games, which makes them a very, very dangerous opponent.
Absolutely, and that sometimes throughout the season has felt a little bit like the Eagles' formula a little bit as well. Is keep the game close and then make sure that you're holding on to the ball at the end of the game, and just wind that clock down. Make sure that you're ahead, and then wind that clock down. The 10.5 minute drive that the Eagles had to close out the Steelers game stands out when you think about that there too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that whole element of clock management is going to be sounds like it's going to be very very key when it comes to this game, is making sure that you're capitalizing on the opportunities and making sure that you're in control of the pace of the game and the speed of the game going through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a better Eagles team than the team that played in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. It's better, better in a number of areas. I mean, the secondary, the defensive backfield is far better, faster, more physical. Uh, the Saquon Barkley has obviously brought uh, a whole new threat to the offense. The way he can run the ball, the way he can take any handoff and turn it into a 60-yard touchdown, which he's done over and over this year. He didn't have that before. The offensive line is still really good. The receivers are still really good. Um, I mean, I think if you look at this, and I think the Eagles coaching is better. I think Vic Fangio is a huge upgrade over Jonathan Gannon. So in all of those areas, I think the Eagles are better now than they were 2 years ago. So I mean, if you're an Eagles fan, you should feel pretty good about that. But you still got to go out and make it happen. And it's up to a lot of this falls on Hurts, to make good decisions with the ball. And I know everyone's saying that the Chiefs are going to have spent all this week just keying on Barkley, and we have to stop Barkley. We have to shut down the running game. Well, I'm sure Washington thought the same thing. I'm sure the Rams thought the same thing. I'm sure Green Bay practiced the same thing. It's not easy to do when you have run up against an offensive line that's this good and a back who's that good, not good, that extraordinary. It's one thing to draw it up on the blackboard, and it's another thing to make it work on the field. And if you look at the Chiefs' defense this year, not great against the run. I mean, especially against zone read kinds of runs. They've teams that ran zone read against them averaged well over 4.5 yards a carry, and some of those teams weren't nearly as good as what the Eagles are. So, yeah, the Chiefs are going to have a game plan for this, but they haven't faced a challenge quite like the Eagles here. So that's what makes this game really interesting. I think it's going to be, from an X's and O's standpoint, a lot of those individual matchups are going to be fun to watch because you've got really good players and really good coaches on both sides of the ball here. So watching this thing play out, I think it's going to be, for a true football aficionado, I think this is going to be a real fun game to watch.
Definitely. And it definitely feels also a lot like those flowers that Nick Sirianni was talking about a couple of seasons ago are finally starting to bloom. Nick Sirianni, it was pointed out, 51-14, I believe was the stat was off the top of my head since he gave that press conference that we all lambasted him for. But it definitely feels like a lot of that is starting to turn around. Um, Last question for you, Ray. This Eagles team has seems to have that different character than each of the other teams that has made it to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 15, Super Bowl 39, Super Bowl 52 obviously had the very big character of being the underdogs. And Super Bowl 57. Definitely, this team has had different characters over those times. What would you consider the character of this particular team to be?
Most talented, most talented. The Dick Vermeil team for Super Bowl 15 was not a abundantly talented team. You had a lot of good players and extremely well coached who played very hard, but they weren't what you would consider a extremely physically gifted bunch. They just weren't. Uh, the the Andy Reid team was they had a lot of really good players, um, and but they were going up against a great team in the Patriots. Um, the one team that won was probably the most unlikely. It was a team that was going up against a juggernaut Patriot team with missing some key pieces, playing with a backup quarterback, playing without your best offensive lineman. I mean, there's a defense that frankly had a lot of holes in it, gave up 600 yards in that game, but found a way to win. Um, and then the team of 2 years ago, which was a young team under a young coach that was still finding its way. That's not true now. I mean, this team has been through a lot. I mean, they came through that awful collapse last year that almost cost the coach's job. They started off poorly this year, found themselves, and then just kind of reinvented themselves the second half of the year, and come into this game playing their best football. Um, they have a really good chance to win. I fully respect who the Chiefs are and what they've accomplished. I mean, they're on the verge of doing something no team in the last 60 years of professional football has done, which is win this thing 3 years in a row. We've seen a lot of really great teams that couldn't pull this off. And so for these guys to be this close, it tells you how good they are. But I like the way the Eagles are playing right now. And I think that they're, I haven't really figured it out to the point where I'm ready to make a prediction. But I really do think that the Eagles are an unusual match because there aren't too many teams in this era of football that are playing the way the Eagles are playing. They can win the game by running the football the way these guys can. That makes them a very challenging team because their opponents don't see that very often. And this is a team with a distinct personality that is going to fight you for 60 minutes. And so if the Chiefs are going to win their third Super Bowl in a row, the Eagles are going to make them earn it. Let's put it that way. I think this is going to be, and I think that's why I think it's going to be a huge audience for this game. And it's not just for the Taylor Swift cutaways. I think people are going to watch this game because it's a matchup of one team trying to make history and another team that's reinventing. I don't want to say reinventing, but playing a brand of football that we haven't seen in a very long time. And I think that I think it's one of the things that makes this game very, very fascinating.
Absolutely. Well, Ray, the last two times the Eagles have won an NFL championship, they were going up against juggernauts. They went up, obviously, in Super Bowl 52 and knocked off the juggernaut New England Patriots. And then in the 1960 NFL championship game, they knocked off the juggernaut Green Bay Packers under the only playoff loss of Vince Lombardi, for whom this trophy is named here. So we'll see if the Eagles can do it again. But Ray, thank you so much for stopping by. And you can catch Ray on the Seth Joyner Super Bowl show on Super Bowl Sunday. So make sure you tune in to get more of his insights as the game progresses. Ray, thank you so much for stopping by.
My pleasure, Joe. Always enjoy it. Nice being with you, and enjoy the game Sunday.
Absolutely, and you as well. And thank you so much to everybody for tuning into the Bird's Nest Podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest Podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage. And if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles!